Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So if you're wondering why am I even doing the ASMR little intro in the beginning, is that later on today I will be uploading the kind of full-length coloring portion of the video in an ASMR format. But for anybody who's looking for a shorter video plus voiceover, I guess this video is for you. So today we are doing an alcohol marker drawing. I already went ahead and did the sketch in Procreate, which I'll show you guys right here, alongside with some stuff regarding the actual line art and all of that as well. So before we get into the actual coloring portion, I wanted to show you guys a little bit more about the transferring of the lines and all that, because I did do it off screen. So right here is the Magicfly fine liner, and I chose kind of like a dark warmer brown to do the line work, and I used my light pad to basically shine the sketch through the Bristol board vellum paper that I'm using from Strathmore, and then I basically just kind of like trace the lines from the sketch below to the paper above. After that, I went ahead and printed out kind of a very simple color comp. I went into kind of this blank sketchbook and kind of laid out some colors that I wanted to use for the particular piece. There's a lot of missing colors, so it's not going to be all laid out there. But as we start to color, I will be selecting more, and I have these swatches to kind of help me gauge what kind of colors I want to be using for this particular piece. I've also used the little plastic sheet that you can place underneath to kind of prevent bleed through to leak from your paper to your desk. So I went ahead and put that underneath, and we can start to select all my colors. So I already pre-selected a lot of my colors like I mentioned earlier, but right now I'm selecting the color specifically only to the background, as I kind of want to tackle that one first. Now, I actually had a previous session planned where I feel like the alcohol marker drawing was a little bit more successful because I did a little bit more planning. So for that one, I also printed out a thumbnail and was able to coordinate the colors a little bit more closely to my thumbnail. But the one for this character, which I haven't even mentioned who I was drawing or going to be coloring today. So this is a character from Honkai Star Rail, and I think his name is Aventurine or Aventurine. I don't know how to say his name because I don't remember from the recent quest. I think his name is Aventurine. But let's talk a little bit more about the coloring process for now of the background. So I personally like to use the Bristol board vellum surface paper from Strathmore, and I'll make sure to list all the supplies in the description if you're interested. And we're using Ohuhu markers today. I believe it's the 320 set. I think it's the Honolulu set. But kind of the reason why I like this paper is that I find it blends fairly well for what I wanted to do, alongside with the paper being a little bit thicker. I feel like it just reacts the way that I want the alcohol markers to react to. I know like my current sketchbook, which has like very thin notebook paper alongside with some other marker paper, kind of blend a little bit nicer, but this one works well enough for what I want to do and can handle a lot of layering, which is kind of nice when working with alcohol markers. So in terms of the coloring itself, I started off with a kind of deeper, darker purple, and then we slowly work from dark to mid-tones to lighter colors up until like paper white. So I kind of wanted to transition from like a dark purple to yellow, basically, is my gradient. So to do that, I have a dark purple, a mid-tone purple, kind of like a purpley pink color, then I have like a peach color, then I have yellow. So I'm kind of using about 4 to 5 colors before we hit the paper white, and I want majority of my light source to be coming from the upper right hand corner. But last minute, before I started coloring, I decided to put like the border back in alongside with the little sparkles, and I added one to the left side. So I don't know if I ended up really considering that as a light source, but for the most part, I have the top right as my light source. So as we move on to coloring the character themselves, I am starting off with the skin. I also blocked in a little bit of the lighting by using that similar kind of yellowy, like a soft yellow color, to kind of plan out where the light's going to be hitting him. But also, I am going to be kind of referring back to the little thumbnail that I printed off onto the grid paper. I'm not really using the grid paper for any particular reason other than the fact that I am running super low on just regular printer paper and I haven't bought any yet. And I don't mind using the grid paper just because I'm using it more for the transfer of the sketch and kind of like as scrap paper. And I have plenty of it from back when I was in school, so might as well just use it up. Probably should have mentioned also that the reason why I decided to do the background first, and this is kind of learning from my, I guess like when I start doing stuff digitally, I like doing this anyways, but my previous session of doing alcohol markers required a much darker color palette, and because the lighting source was coming from a candle, there was nothing really else illuminating his surroundings. So for this one in particular, because I have the background set to be kind of on the darker side, and I wanted Aventurine to kind of be within the environment rather than standing in front of the entirety of the background, I wanted the colors to match a little bit closely. Like, I guess like his colors to match closer to the background colors so that you can tell that they're being influenced by one another rather than making Aventurine stand out completely from the background and the background's just kind of like a backdrop. It's just a good way to allow myself to see the range of the entire piece and just to make things look a little bit more cohesive color palette wise. Also, I kind of regret this portion. So as I'm doing his little, what do you call this? Like the boob window for him, chest window, I accidentally started to use a lot more yellow into his skin. So he looks a little bit, he looks a little too golden in terms of his complexion compared to the rest of him, so it looks very odd and almost doesn't really read as his skin, so it's kind of an error on my part. I don't know why I didn't just pick up like the peach tone that I had earlier, because his chest isn't really going to be hit by the light anyways, so it shouldn't really be kind of getting that yellowy kind of tone on his chest. So just small things that I have like nitpicked about this drawing the more I see it. Another one though. So initially I was gonna make this little, I guess I'm gonna refer to it as a coin, but I was gonna make it a poker chip, hence probably the size of it and kind of the patterning. But as I was counting the patterning, I needed one more set of like lines within it to make it make sense, because right now if I go in a circle from like, let's say black, white, all the way around, it would actually end up being either two white next to each other or two black next to each other. So I decided to make it a gold coin so I didn't really have to worry about the patterning. I mean, it was kind of like that in my thumbnail anyways, so maybe I can make it pass, but I've already told you guys my mistake, so there's no need to hide it. So for the hair, I was low-key avoiding the hair for quite a while. So blonde hair, when it comes to be like in the shadows, I feel like because it's such a lighter color, it gets easily affected by the temperature quite a bit. I feel like some more neutral colors that are on a little bit more of the darker side wouldn't get so influenced, but I was trying to balance out and think what I wanted to add to his hair to make it first darker and potentially any other colors to make it more vibrant. So I kind of chickened out and I just went a very standard route for the hair. So I started off with the base, then I kind of darkened up shadows using kind of more of that goldy creamish color, and then after that, as we move forward, I'm going to be only adding a little bit of purple here and there. I kind of wish there was a way for me to comfortably add that kind of teal mint kind of turquoise color to his hair. I did have it in my thumbnail little color comp, but I was too chicken to do it just because the way markers layer, I feel like I would have to pre-plan it a little bit, otherwise the kind of like mint or teal color might not read the way I want to, because I put a full pass of this yellow down first, so it might read entirely green rather giving that kind of like touch of coolness that I would have wanted. But then again, like with that being said, I probably could have just added a light blue to it so that when it does get kind of tinted by the yellow, it would just kind of look a little bit more green rather than more yellow if I added the teal. I should have probably also mentioned this earlier, so please ignore his shoulders. Yeah, I probably should have mentioned that when I was explaining my sketching process alongside with the line work. So I did do the sketch on Procreate, but I had it on, I think, an 8.5 by 11 canvas rather than the 9 by 12, which isn't a big deal because it just means there's about 1/2 inch on each side that's being kind of cut off. But the problem is that my printer refused to tile my drawing, which I was planning on filling the entire page. So instead of making Aventurine a little bit bigger on the, I guess like the drawing surface, I decided to extend out his shoulders so that we could fill up and kind of cut off the rest of the space so that he can stand in the very front. And I don't know why I made the choice of just extending his shoulders. So his shoulders are very wide compared to his tiny face now. So he kind of looks like that teddy bear meme where you have like a big body and a tiny head. So please ignore that. It wasn't my intention to make his shoulders that wide anyways. I think I just ended up drawing that on my sketch with ballpoint pen later on, and then when I was inking it, when I transfer the lines, I don't transfer the lines by sketching it then inking it. I just directly ink on top of the paper and, you know, hope for the best in terms of my lines were clean enough for me to interpret. But I did not notice that, especially the right side, his shoulder is just way too long. But enough about my weird little regrets and complaints about this piece. I definitely enjoy the process of just doing traditional art in general because it allows me to use the piece as a way to grow from my mistakes or just to learn things. Like, I think I know how I prefer to color with markers. I really don't like to run excess ink. So I usually, for the most part, will try to lay down my darker colors first, like you're seeing me do here for his shirt. And then as we move kind of like closer to the lighter colors, I'll try to buffer each transition as close as I can so that the gradation is smooth enough. And then if I need to add any extra shadows or like folds or anything like that, then I would add it on top if I want it to really stand out and kind of have that sharper edge. But anything that I really want it to be blended and soft, I will most likely blend the lighter color into the darker color rather than the other way around. And I'm pretty sure that's like how majority of people use their alcohol markers. But sometimes in my brain, I really have to tell myself like, gotta start off dark, then go to midtones, then go light, because my brain's wired in such a way that I like to either build up layers gradually, or I just know that I usually like to start with the lightest layer first. But because alcohol markers tend to be a little bit more on the pricier side in terms of like art supplies, but also like not all these colors are going to have refills, so I do want to treat them a little bit more with care. So I don't want to be haphazardly just applying so many layers if I know I'm going to cover them up, even though I know layering is going to be important for like markers and stuff, especially if you're going to achieve different colors by like, in painting terms, kind of like glazing. So you're just using transparent layers to get your desired color or your desired finish or to mute colors and stuff. So it won't prevent me from doing that, but there's definitely going to be some places where I'm going to rely a lot on like gradations and transitioning to fill up an area. So for his gloves and a lot of the black areas for his clothing, I did end up using kind of I think it's a neutral gray or cool gray, which kind of reads very black. And I transition it with kind of more of a brownish red, very dark color, and then I try muting it with a kind of more mid-tone gray, and then I will transition that also to a almost like a lighter brownish gray before we hit any kind of like highlight color, which is in this case kind of like that yellow, which is like all over the piece anyways. So for the most part, this piece isn't exactly my favorite, but I definitely think it made me a little bit more comfortable using alcohol markers again, especially because I'm working on I guess like a larger scale. I've done a few, especially for like, I think YouTube shorts. I've done some in my sketchbook, but I feel like the paper's a little bit different. I tend to not layer as much, and I kind of keep those drawings and stuff a little bit on the smaller side, so I don't really have to worry about the coverage or gradations or like, you know, the way how colors transition a little bit better. But I think that's it for this piece. I think we're at the very end, and this is kind of the aftermath of what my desk kind of looks like with all the markers laid out. I have to go ahead and start to kind of resort them, and funny enough, I actually have footage of me sorting the markers back into where they were. I didn't realize I didn't end the recording, so I have this very like silent footage of me just sorting my markers back into their appropriate compartments and me pushing the mic out of the way and all that stuff, because I usually like to clean up before I kind of like finish up for the night if I can, unless I'm in the middle of the drawing. But luckily for me, this piece, minus like I guess like the sketching and the line art, only took about 2 hours, between 2 hours and 2 hours 30 minutes for me to finish the coloring. So a little bit on the quicker side compared to the other session that I had planned. Like I said, it's not my favorite, but it's definitely still very fun to kind of do an illustration fully with markers like this. I also wanted to show some close-ups of the kind of the texture and the way it blends on this particular vellum. And then here's the back with the bleed through. So not too much bleed through, I think, because there's a lot of waiting time between when I layer up colors, but there's a lot of ghosting. So yeah, I just like to place that kind of plastic sheet underneath to kind of just in case to protect my desk. But I think that's it for today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching the process for today. But yeah, I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye! Oh, also ASMR video will be posted in a couple of hours. Bye!